Before he knew it, the days were flying by and turning into weeks, then months. No matter how tedious the journeys to the beach got, he never missed a day. Even if he could only be with you for 30 minutes, he took whatever he was given with a smile. Every second with you was worth it. He lay awake at night on the sandy ocean bed, thinking about you. How you talked for hours and it never felt awkward. How one time he made you laugh so hard you snorted. You were so embarrassed, but he thought it was the cutest noise in the world. He even loved those moments you both lay in silence, listening to the waves crash onto the shore, and watching the sunset as seagulls danced in the sky. He remembered one time, you lay so close to him your hand accidentally brushed against his. It sent electricity through his body, just like the first time his hand made contact with your skin. It was too bad you pulled away before he could intertwine his fingers with yours. He continuously convinced himself he definitely would have taken your hand in that moment had you not pulled away so quick. His tail flopped against the water's edge. You sat beside him, eyes sparkling with passion as you explained to him about the concepts of art and photography. Capturing a single moment in time forever? He repeated with a hum, bringing a hand up to his chin in thought. He thought over the concept. Sometimes they would carve pictures into rocks, but it was a hard and grueling task, so not many people took to the hobby. You used your phone to snap a picture of him before turning the device to his eyes. He gasped, grabbing the phone from you so he could take a closer look. Whoa, that's me? His lips parted. Do I really look like that? He tilted his head, one cheek puffing out. You giggled. There probably weren't mirrors in the ocean. Was this the first time he's seen himself? What's with that expression? He shrugged, tilting the phone in his hand as if it would make him look better. I've only seen myself in the reflection of the ocean, but the ripples make it hard to get a clear image. He leaned closer to the phone, eyes narrowing. My eyes are really big, he muttered, pressing his fingers to his eyelid. You snatched the phone from him. He wasn't about to get insecure on your watch. Well, I happen to think you have beautiful eyes. He sucked in a harsh breath, his cheeks dusting pink. You do? He asked, his voice wavering as he spoke. You nodded. By human standards, you're very good looking, so don't be putting yourself down. You scolded him softly while putting your phone away. His fingers dug into the sand, the grains lodging underneath his fingernails. Hearing you say he was good looking, that you thought he had beautiful eyes, his heart couldn't take it. His heart clenched up in his chest, stripping him from breath. He gulped, hoping you wouldn't see how hot his face had gotten. Oh, I actually wanted to ask you something. You turned to him, eyes wide with curiosity. He nodded, urging you to go on as his hands played with the sand. Well, ever since I met you, you've been able to understand me. How come? You say you've never met another human, so how can you speak the same language? He shifted in his spot to get comfier, hoping to relax his tense body. Your compliments were still ringing in his ears, boosting his ego. Well, from what's been told from generation to generation, merfolk came first. Humans evolved from us. I'm not the first mer person to talk to a human. There have been many. At one point, almost all merfolk were doing it. We were all friends. We learned your languages so we could communicate better. But that was a long time ago. He frowned, a shadow sweeping across his eyes. Things went bad. Our people started being hunted, disappearing, never to return. Those humans wanted to hurt us. Now we have rules in place. We're not allowed near humans. We hide our existence, which is easy since humans have only discovered about 20% of the ocean. You're not allowed near humans? You repeated, jaw dropping in the process. Izuku let out a breathy laugh, though there wasn't much humor to it. Yeah. Everyone at home always tells me I have a dangerous curiosity. I guess they're right, since, technically, I shouldn't be here. He looked down at his tail splashing in the water. His eyes remained distant for a moment before he shook his head. Even if it's frowned upon, I don't regret the time we spent together. In fact, I treasure every second. He smiled, looking into your eyes so you knew he wasn't lying. You turned your head away from him, unable to fight the smile coming onto your lips. I'm glad you don't. My life has been so much better since I met you. And I'm not just saying that because you're a magical, unknown creature from the depths of the ocean. You joked, and he giggled. Even if you were a human like me, it wouldn't change a thing. I like you for who you are. You make me happy, you admitted with red cheeks. Now it was his turn to hide his face, his cheeks pushed up into a smile. You make me happy, too. He replied. The giddy feeling in his chest made his tail wiggle with joy. Every day he spent with you felt like he was on cloud 9. He got to admire every little detail about you. How your eyes sparkled when he talked about something that you were passionate about. How your nose crinkled at things you didn't like. How you mimicked him without even realizing it by splashing your feet in the water next to his tail. He loved hearing about human culture too, something his people had become greatly disconnected with. He was surprised to know about all the creations humans have made over the years. He was slightly jealous you had so many machines to help you do tasks with ease. You brought him human food, and he brought you ocean treasures. He shared just as much about his people as you did about yours. He trusted you. You had both created this unspoken bond together. He was falling deeper and deeper in love. His connection with you rivaled that of the ocean. If he was ever given the chance, he would leave the sea behind and choose to be with you in a heartbeat. The sun began to set over the horizon, leaving a painted reflection on the water's surface. Like every day before you both left, you sat and watched the sun set. It was silent, peaceful, not a word spoken between you two as you found comfort in each other's presence. The familiar sounds of waves crashing against rocks and seagulls yelling from the skies were enough for you both. You didn't need to speak. Izuku turned to you, catching the way the orange glow of the sun reflected on your skin, how your hair danced in the gentle breeze. There was a content smile on your face, making his heart leap into his throat. He wondered if one day he would be able to look at you and not feel like his heart was about to implode. He wasn't sure what overcame him, but the need to confess his feelings grew stronger the more he stared at you. Maybe it was the serenity? Or maybe it was how breathtaking you looked. It just felt like the right moment. He cleared his throat, ready to speak. Listener, When you turned to him, his body froze, words lodged into his throat. His breathing became rapid and choppy, his hands gathering sweat. Yeah? What's up? Are you okay? You tilted your head, worried about his strange behavior. He looked like he was about to pass out, or throw up. Maybe both? He suddenly shook his head, and with the speed of a cheetah, he crawled forward and dove into the water. Never mind, I'll see you tomorrow, he yelled, not leaving any room for you to reply as he began swimming away as fast as his tail could manage, not daring to look back. When he submerged underwater, he slapped his palm against his forehead, teeth gritted together. I'm such an idiot. The next day, he swam back towards the beach like he was in a marathon. He was desperate to apologize for his weird behavior yesterday, but his friends had started prying into where he was rushing off to. Out of all the days for them to get nosy and interrogate him, it had to be the day he was going to apologize to you. He was worried you might be upset at him for rushing off yesterday, and now he was going to be late too? He could only hope that you would wait for him. Izuku looked back a few times to make sure they weren't following him. He wasn't the best liar in the world. He never had to lie to them before, so he wasn't sure he had convinced them that he wasn't doing anything special. He told them that he was just going for a swim with the dolphins, But they didn't look convinced. His body language gave him away. He hated lying to them. It felt awful. But he knew they wouldn't understand your situation. You were safe to be around. There was no danger. Upon his second visit to the beach, you promised not to tell anyone. In fact, you had no interest in telling others about your find. You knew what humans were capable of, and you promised to protect him from any harm. You cared about him, and he trusted you with his life. But the others would never see it that way. As the waters got shallower, he moved up to the surface. Eventually, his head poked out, locks of green hair being pulled down by the water, covering his eyes like soaked curtains. You remember the first time he had poked his head from the water in front of you? You laughed, claiming he reminded you of a wet dog. Whatever that was. He used his hand to brush his hair back from his face. He noticed the vacant beach. There was nothing but footprints left in the sand. He slowly slunk back into the water until it was just under his eyes. "I miss them," he said, his words creating bubbles in the water. He turned to leave, but he noticed your bag was there, partially hidden behind a rock. He swam forward towards the shore. The footprints looked like they trailed around the cliffside, disappearing once they reached the rocks. He dove back into the water and swam around the rocky terrain. He resurfaced to see if there were any signs of you. He sighed in relief once he saw you. You hadn't left early after all. You stood at the edge of an abandoned pier. Most of the wood was chipped away as if someone had taken a hammer to it. It creaked with every movement you made, though you didn't pay any attention to it. You turned upon seeing the green hair poking from the water. You waved, getting ready to turn and run off the pier. He sighed. At least you didn't seem upset with him about yesterday. You barely finished taking one step when the wood beneath your feet cracked. Your sporadic movements didn't agree with the feeble pier. It felt like it happened in slow motion. Your body fell, disappearing into the void of water below. He didn't have time to think or react. His body dove forward as soon as your body fell. His heart sunk along with your limp figure, his hands outstretched as if it would get him to you faster. A cloud of red enveloped your head, mixing with the blue of the water. He would have panicked if not for all the adrenaline coursing through his veins. All that mattered was getting you back to safety. He finally grabbed you, his arms looping under yours as he pulled you back up to the surface. When you hit the open air, you didn't make any movement, your body floating lifelessly in his arms. He shook his head, the worst-case scenarios starting to eat at his anxieties. He had to get you back to the beach. He moved you behind him, pressing you onto his back and looping your arms around his neck. He grasped your wrists tightly as he shredded through the water with the strength of a speedboat. In a matter of minutes, you were back at the beach. He placed your body safely onto the sand before he pressed his ear to your lips. There was no breath. With no hesitation, he placed his lips onto yours, the water filling your airway and coming back up, filling his mouth. What a nasty feeling it was, but if it was to save you, then he would ignore it. He pulled away and spat out the water onto the sand beside him. He was in no way good at healing, especially not humans. He could only thank Poseidon that he was graced with the ability to use water magic. It may have just saved you. His calloused hand pressed against your cheek, turning your limp head to him. "Listen, please. Please wake up," he pleaded helplessly. You let out a cough, excess water leaving your airways. You were breathing again, but your eyes didn't open. The red blotch of sand under your head brought attention back to the other problem. Oh God. He looked around. His stomach was churning. He had to stop the bleeding. His eyes darted around for a solution, eventually landing on your bag. He used his arms to drag himself towards it. He began rummaging through for anything he could use to stop the bleeding. He found a spare shirt, letting out a breath of relief. This would stop the bleeding for now. He took the material and ripped it apart into strips, hoping you wouldn't be mad at him for destroying your shirt, but it was for a good cause. He moved back over to you, his hand cradled your head, holding it up. It was only a small wound, thankfully, it wouldn't kill you as long as he could stop the bleeding. He examined it. He didn't want to bandage it without cleaning it first. He grabbed your bag again and found a water bottle. He remembered you telling him about how humans didn't like salty water. He didn't really understand why, but it was probably a safer bet to clean it using your human water than his ocean water. He tipped the bottle over the wound, water washing over the cut, drenching your hair in the process. After he was sure it was clean enough, he bandaged it up with a cloth, making sure it was secure. Even after he was done, he never let you go. Rather, he held you tighter. One hand cradled your injured head as the other arm went around your waist. He rocked you gently, holding you against his chest. He was breathless. His mouth was dry as his heart thumped against his ribcage. He was more scared now than when that shark chased him all those months ago. The panic of losing you was worse than anything he had ever felt. And losing you to the very place he called home, no less. It sent shivers down his spine. You let out a groan, your arms shifting in his hold. He looked down and his eyes met yours. You winced in pain as you moved. Careful. Don't move too much. I've got you. He brushed hair from your face. Your half-lidded eyes looked up at him, dazed and confused. What happened? That pier you were on broke. You fell into the ocean. Must have hit your head on the way down, too. You almost drowned, he explained, his face twisting into worry again. To utter shock, you smiled, despite the obvious pain in your eyes. You saved me? Of course I did, he exasperated, as if it were the most stupid question anyone had ever asked him. He felt your hand come up and brush through his damp hair, much like he had done to yours a moment ago. I guess we're even now, then, you chuckled. He always made such a big deal of repaying you for helping him when he was washed up. Being out of the water for too long could have dried up his gills, and that would have suffocated him to death. You had saved his life, and now he had saved yours. Oh, shit. That really hurts. You pressed your fingers to the cloth around your head. Izuku helped you sit up, steadying you when you swayed. You had lost a lot of blood. He was worried you might not make it home on your own. You should really get to the hospital. He was only trying to help, but when you laughed at the suggestion, his shoulders deflated. I think you mean hospital? You corrected him. Oh. He giggled along with you, finally understanding. But you're right. I should. I'm just not sure I can make it up the cliff right now. I feel so lightheaded. He shuffled closer, despite you sitting up just fine on your own. He was ready to catch you if necessary. He was not going to let any more harm come to you. Is there any water left? You asked him. He had reached for the bottle that he had used to clean your wound. There was a little less than half left. He gave it to you and you hastily drank it all down. Once finished, you let out a satisfied gasp before discarding the bottle into your bag again. Feel better? Not yet. Soon, you replied, tilting your head forwards as if it would help get the blood back to your head. He watched your movement, his tail gently splashing against the water's edge to stop himself from drying up. His eyes skimmed the back of your head, where the wound was. His mind went back to seeing your lifeless body sinking into the ocean's darkness as a cloud of red engulfed you. It was something he never wanted to see again, though the memory was well carved into his brain at this point. He hated to admit it, but for a second it crossed his mind that you might have died, that he hadn't been quick enough to save you. Holding your limp, unbreathing body in his arms had shaken him to his core. Your hand accidentally grazed his on the sand, pulling him out of his swirling thoughts. It was just like that day a few weeks ago, when your hand brushed against his for the first time. But this time, he didn't hold back. You went to pull your hand away, but his larger hands encased it, pulling it back towards him. You gasped as your hand was snatched from you. His skin felt so smooth against yours. He looked deep into your eyes. I have something to say. He'd never looked so serious before. You gulped, nodding for him to go on. He inhaled through his nose, his fingers subconsciously squeezing yours. Before you found me washed up on shore, I used to come here every day. He started, pausing for a second, but you didn't make any reactions, just waiting for him to go on. My friends and I used to spend a lot of time here, but then we had to go away since a human found our cove. But I found that I couldn't leave. I was so enamored by you, and I slowly started to fall in love. He heard you sucking in a breath. Then I finally got to know you. I fell more in love than ever before. Seeing you almost drown, thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't been there, it made me realize. He looked away, out at the vast ocean that separated his world from yours. What we're doing right now, seeing each other every day, it might not last forever. He hated admitting it out loud. He could hear his heart breaking in two at the thought of being torn away from you again. Thoughts of you moving away, someone else finding this beach and ruining your secret space. One of you could get hurt. He could be put in lockdown. There were so many possibilities that were running through his head. I just wanted to tell you how I felt. I want you to know how much you really mean to me. I'm in love with you, so whatever happens in the future, please, always remember that. You think too much, you whispered without missing a beat, your expression unreadable through his eyes. We're always going to find a way to be together. No matter how long it takes, we'll always find our way back, you whispered, your fingers shifting to intertwine with his. How do you know that? He asked. His eyes were full of doubt, but you seemed so sure of yourself. He pulled on his hand, yanking him forward until his nose brushed against yours. Because I love you too. His eyes widened. He sucked in a breath as your lips moved closer to his. He could hear his heartbeat echoing through his ears like the beating of a drum. Your lips finally made contact with his. He inhaled through his nose. Your lips were so soft, softer than he could ever imagine them to be. His lips quivered under yours, shaky breaths exhaling from his nose. He tried to keep up with your moving lips despite the lack of expertise. You smiled into it, putting a hand onto the back of his head, patting down his hair, and like putty in your hands, he relaxed. You finally pulled back to see his flushed face. He brought up a hand to his lips, pressing his fingertips to them. A kiss? He breathed out, looking at you with half-lidded eyes. He smiled, shuffling closer so he could sit side by side with you on the beach. His arm came to your shoulder as you curled into his side. You were right. As long as you loved each other, there was nothing that could tear you apart. You would always find your way back, and you would always have a shared home where the ocean and the land met.